All right, Josh, now over the past several months, we've been talking about cutbacks to different government agencies, and yesterday we talked about the cutbacks regarding the National Weather Service.
Yes.
Yeah, so now this morning we're talking about cuts that could make fighting wildfires a lot harder. You're back with us. You're going to talk to us about the U.S. Forest Service and cuts that they're seeing.
Right on the cusp of wildfire season.
I was
going to
say,
are we?
This is a crucial time to be seeing cuts like this.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind that we're not into the meat and potatoes of fire season yet. So the moment of truth is coming up over the next couple months. But absolutely, interagency cooperation is essential to fighting fires at the local, state, and federal level. So when the Department of Government Efficiency, commonly known as DOGE, laid off 2,000 non-firefighting probationary workers a couple months back, it was seen as a big hit to Washington's Department of Natural Resources, specifically to the Wildfire Division.
Thomas Kyle Millward, the Wildfire Communications Manager for the Department of Washington Natural Resources, says there's a lack of understanding from the federal government about state and federal partnerships in response to wildfires, especially when it comes to understanding the roles within the agency.
If someone was to go through a line item budget, they're going to see someone with a job title like forest conservationist, and they're not going to immediately assume, oh, this person is a wildland firefighter support staff member, and that person may get cut.
In addition to the DOGE cuts to personnel, the U.S. Forest Service can expect a decrease in funding as well. The House Agriculture Committee, which oversees the U.S. Forest Service, could see cuts of $230 billion. Thomas says the combination of funding and personnel cuts will end up directly impacting the support structure, like the role of the forest conservationist, around the wildland firefighter, and that is not a model for success.
There is very real concern at my agency level that, even once we look past the seasonal firefighter deficit potential, the very real possibility that the Forest Service won't be able to adequately support their suppression efforts due to the fact that so many support staff, that militia model, that ready reserve, those personnel members, are just simply potentially not employed.
Well, I first started working on the story months back when these cuts were first announced in February. Fast forward a few more weeks. At the beginning of March, I talked to Thomas with Washington DNR. He said he didn't know what was going to happen with the Forest Service. Now, fast forward a few months after that, now that we're on the cusp of fire season, he still doesn't know what's going to happen with the Forest Service.
It's not just the ecological concerns over the proposed cuts. There could also be impacts to our local economy right here in our region. Paul Tabillon has family and friends that work in forestry and fire prevention services. He says people in those jobs also provide a boost to our economy.
Those are good paying jobs that people need when they're transitioning between college. Several firefighters I know were coming to go into college. Those are the kind of careers that really help fill in the gaps in our economy, but more importantly, help safeguard our land from not just rampant fires.
Republican Congressman Dan Newhouse represents the 4th Washington District. While he hasn't always agreed with the Trump administration on the issues, he is voting for these proposed cuts. When I asked for comment on the cuts to the Forest Service and the National Weather Service, he declined to answer, but his team sent me a statement. A strong, well-trained federal workforce is essential to our weather preparedness and wildfire response. I've communicated to the Trump administration that there should be a more nuanced approach to personnel and funding cuts. On his website, the congressman has a lengthy message he wrote back on March 3rd concerning cuts to federal agencies by DOGE. He says he wants to rein in spending and that DOGE can identify how to use taxpayer dollars to build on what is working in our government. We'll have a link to the full message at applevalleyNewsNow.com, but an interesting part to point out reads, it is vital that an entity like DOGE work closely with Congress and not default to a one-size-fits-all sledgehammer approach across the agencies. Thomas says Commissioner of Public Lands Dave Upthegrove says the DNR will take on a bigger role as needed this fire season, since there has been a lack of information from the federal government. And how will the DNR tackle the extra work? By depending on mutual aid agreements with other states as far away as Texas and North Carolina.
There's definitely some serious concern from my agency that the feds will not be able to field the same amount of seasonal firefighters that they fielded last year. And that definitely impacts things like response times and response capability when it comes to suppression.
Thomas says mutual aid response is not a new thing, but it may need to be relied on much more than usual. While the concern is still very real among people like Thomas and Tabayon, Thomas says the agency is going to give everything it has to keep people and their property safe.
Now, no one from the top of the NWS agency, and I know that was mainly about the Forest Service, but it ties back into federal agencies. No one from the top of the NWS agency to the regional office was willing to go on camera and discuss the layoffs on the record. So how will we be affected by potential cuts or layoffs when it comes to severe weather or wildfires? Unfortunately, it's just still up in the air.
So you talk about this impacting possible wildland fighting. Before you said 2,000 non-firefighting probationary workers had been laid off. Two questions. One, kind of what were their roles and how is that going to impact anything? There were non-firefighters. And then have any actual firefighters been laid off that we know of?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual number of wildland firefighters, I don't have that off the top of my head. But
would it be seasonal or just for fire season? The probationary?
Well, so like he was explaining in the story, so like a forest conservationist in a line-by-line budget item, that would be someone who's responsible for forest management, and that's very important during the off-season to clear underbrush and to try to get all those fuels that they can out of our forests and out of our wildlands. And so when you don't have that work put in during the off-season, it makes the on-season firefighting effort especially difficult.
Right, like a domino effect.
Yes.
All right, thanks for breaking that down.
Part 1 from yesterday and part 2 all up on our website.